and welcome to the Hitachi Partner Theatre session today. Really pleased to have you join us. My name is Alex Holland. I'm the Director for Industry Solutions at Hitachi Europe. And today's session is going to be all about systems thinking for low-carbon urban mobility. So what do we mean by that exactly? Well, first of all, we're going to be looking at whole system approaches from a multimodal point of view. So about integrating different transport modes in order to be able to deliver new kinds of passenger services. And shortly, we'll have Lewis Brencher from TfW up on this stage telling you about all the exciting plans for Wales. But also, we're going to be looking at the whole system from an energy and data point of view. And as Hitachi are this year's Interchange Energy Partners, I'm going to start off with some examples to illustrate why we think that energy really needs to be at the heart of this whole systems transport thinking. So to begin with, we have to consider power availability, which is really becoming a key operational constraint for transport companies. So as we know, in many areas, the grid has insufficient capacity for the growing demand from the transport sector for things like e-bus depots, metro systems, electric tram systems, etc. So how might we overcome this constraint using systems thinking? Well, if you take the example of a grid-constrained e-bus depot, so we're seeing bus depots now successfully deploying smart charging systems that are able to optimize and prioritize the allocation of limited available power to make sure that each bus gets just the energy that they need to fulfill their operational schedule. And then secondly, actually this charging schedule also needs to be aligned with that operational schedule and with the maintenance schedule. And in fact, these are not three separate plans, three separate things. They're part of one integrated whole, right? They're only 24 hours in the day. So it's through thinking about this whole systems approach that we're able to alleviate that. I mean, we can think also in the context of a city, optimizing power against or across different transportation modes. So metro systems, for example, tend to consume more power during the day, whereas bus depots tend to consume more at night when they're charging the buses. So how might we use spare overnight grid capacity from the metro infrastructure to support bus charging? Okay, so much for power availability. What about energy cost? So we're seeing energy cost becoming a major part of overall operational expenditure. And with the advent of half-hourly energy pricing, we'll be seeing fluctuating tariffs throughout the day. So operators who can flex their operations without impacting passenger services will be able to significantly reduce their costs. So, for example, metro systems, which are traditionally very large consumers of energy. London Underground, for example, consumes more than 1.2 billion kilowatt hours every year. They can introduce operational measures, trying to reduce things like train acceleration to dramatically lower energy use. But this will have an impact on timetables, it'll have an impact on signaling, of course on passenger flow. So all of this needs to be considered and optimized from a whole system perspective. And then finally, transport is no longer just an energy consumer. It is becoming part of the energy system actually itself. So you can consider forms of transportation infrastructure actually as grid assets if we're able to adjust when and how it consumes energy. We can then provide flex services to the grid operator, and the transport operator can thereby earn new streams of revenue from doing that. But of course, if we're going to be shifting how we consume power, that needs to be fully integrated from an operations, from a maintenance, and from a services point of view. So again, a systems thinking approach is really important. Right, so well, at Hitachi, we support operators in managing low-carbon transportation systems with a variety of technology, intelligent operating control centers, green CBTC systems, EV fleet charging, and things like on-site energy management systems with battery energy storage and local renewable energy fully integrated. And as electrification accelerates, and competition for grid capacity intensifies, it's the organizations that succeed will be those who think differently about this. So it's those that see passenger services, operations, and energy not as separate silos, but as part of one connected system. Well, thank you for listening to that. I'd like to welcome on stage now Lewis Brencher, the Executive Director of Customer Communications at TfW, to tell us about their plans for multimodal. Thank you, Lewis.
Good morning. Lewis Twee. My name's Lewis, and as I was kindly introduced, I'm the Exec Director for Customer and Communications at Transport for Wales. And I'm going to take you through three main elements for this presentation. So I'll give you a little bit of overview of Transport for Wales, about what we're up to and what our remit is, a little bit about how we are integrating and how we are developing something we're calling the T-Network. And then finally, I'll zoom in a bit on some of the digital developments that we are working through with colleagues in Hitachi to help make that integrated T-Network come to life for our customers. So first of all, who are we? So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Welsh Government, and we are remitted on behalf of the Welsh Government to deliver sustainable transport services across the whole of the nation of Wales. And our vision is essentially to make public transport, walking and cycling, Wales's favourite way to travel. We have a number of subsidiary organisations, which I'll just touch on briefly, just to give you a flavour of the breadth of responsibility we have. So we have Pullman Rail Limited, which is a rolling stock manufacturing and maintenance organisation. We have TfW Innovation Services, which is all about driving innovation and working with third parties. And then Fibre Limited, and this is a digital organisation that we are wholly owned, which drives digital connectivity around our rail infrastructure. We also provide technical advice, and we help the Welsh Government with policy development, working really closely with our local government partners around transport planning, regional transport development, and we also deliver major infrastructure investment schemes. So some of you might be familiar with the South Wales Metro project, for example, which is a core part of our remit. Again, I mentioned Wales's favourite way to travel is our vision. So this is all about helping people choose to travel more sustainably. And the T-Network is the concept that we've developed to describe the integrated network across the whole of Wales. Now, some of you will be familiar with the fact that we already run the majority of train operations in Wales. We are the rail operator. There's a piece of legislation just been passed in the Welsh Parliament, which means that bus franchising is in the process of being implemented. So we will have responsibility for the franchise bus operation across the whole of Wales, rail operations, and walking and cycling. Okay, a bit more about the T-Network. So a joined-up integrated network of trains, buses, walking, wheeling, and cycling, very much inspired in a common sense way from what we see, the exciting work that's happening in Manchester, but also some of the well-established work that's happening in London and other parts of the world where we know integration is working really well. It's about the physical infrastructure, the physical services we provide, but also the digital infrastructure as well, and that's hence why I'm going to come on to talk about our digital project in a second. So how do we interpret and how do we define integration? For us, it's about seamless multimodal travel, so integrating journey planning. It's also about integrated retailing and ticketing, making it as easy as possible to access services, purchase tickets, and plan journeys. It's about connecting the digital world and the physical world to make sure it is as seamless and easy to access as possible. And finally, to make sure we do that with everyone in mind, to make sure that everyone can access our services. So our multimodal digital strategy. So this is how do we bring the T-Network to life from a digital context. So some examples here of some of the mock-ups of early work we're doing, but essentially this is about making sure that we have one single place for customers to be able to plan their journeys, purchase tickets, and then build loyalty out from those digital platforms, and having that single view of the customer right the way from the initial inquiries all the way through to post-journey rationalization as well. So in one sentence, the digital work we're developing off the back of the T-network concept is one place to plan and pay for your seamless door-to-door journeys and more. And for customers, in order to become Wales's favourite way to travel, Project Eno, which is the internal name for the project that I'm talking about, is going to make it easier for customers to plan and pay wherever they are. So a little bit more about the detail of the project. So a single, unifying, uniquely Welsh app for the people of Wales. Welsh language is something we're really proud of, and is a unique selling point for the people of Wales that we're really keen to build on. It's about creating that multimodal door-to-door journey planning functionality. Accurate real-time information across modes is critical to us, and we know there's a lot of gaps in Wales in particular at the moment around allowing people to not just plan in advance, but be able to react when there's disruption as well. Simplified retailing, so some of you may have come across the mantra within Welsh Government policy around one network, one timetable, one ticket. Our digital touchpoints all need to enable this. And I mentioned already personalization, loyalty and rewards. How do we build demand for the network, and how do we build yield from existing passengers to make sure that we are reaffirming that choice, that positive active choice they've made to use sustainable transport. And then finally, really important lesson we've learned certainly from colleagues in London and others is that third-party commercialization opportunity that we need to bake into our digital platforms. And here's just a visualization of the overall structure of the digital development that we're creating. So this section here essentially is the front-end element that we're developing. So this is very much the traditional things you'd expect to see. So app, website, and in future interfacing with AI and voice assistants, for example. The second element is colleague interface. We want to make sure that our colleagues are even more informed and even more empowered than our customers. So making sure that our colleague interfaces are critically connected into this. Middleware, so this essentially is the enabler of the third-party retailing and how we get all these different systems to work together, and that brings together the theme around systems thinking. Essentially, this is a suite of APIs that allow other third parties to interact with our data and allow us to be innovative and challenge ourselves in terms of what that customer experience is going to be like. And then the most important bit, even though it doesn't show that on the slide, is the actual engine that sits beneath that, and that's the piece of work that our colleagues in Hitachi are delivering for us, which is that journey planning, retailing engine that drives everything else. CRM, really important, and that, again, that systems approach for us is really, really important in understanding our customers and building that relationship with our customers. So our customer relationship management technology is critical to that. And then finally, and again, I think this repeats back to that point around whole systems approach, is our own enterprise data platform as an organization. So making sure that whatever data is available to us within the organization is useful, accessible, and connected into all these other systems. So when we make decisions in our control center, when there's a change in terms of ticketing policy or pricing, it's all managed in such a way that our customers and our digital platforms can then make the most use of that data. So again, for customers, I mentioned, want to make it as easy as possible, but that's not easy in its own right. That is a tip of the iceberg. There's a heck of a lot of work we need to do in the background to make sure the systems work together in terms of enabling what should be a relatively simple proposition for a customer. For colleagues, as I said, making sure that our frontline colleagues are as empowered, informed, and equipped as possible to give our customers the best possible experience. And in the world of AI development, we think as part of our brand that colleagues and visible human-focused support is going to be as critical as ever. But we need to make sure that our colleagues are equipped and informed in order to be able to provide the best face-to-face service for those that need it as possible. And then finally, from the technology side of things, making sure that everything works in one seamless overall system, as I mentioned, so that everything connects together, whether that flows out into all the various different touch points. So one of the things that we're working through at the moment with our colleagues in local government is how do we make sure that digital information flows through from our central planning systems, frontline app systems, all the way through to that local government-owned infrastructure as well. I'm sure many of you in the room have got lots of experience of dealing with different types of bus stop infrastructure and making sure those digital connectivity works well. So that's really, really critical to the work we're doing. And then I've just got some visualizations of what this starts to look like. Apologies, the resolution may not be great, but you can just see visually how this starts to develop using our T-network concept. And one of the things that we've developed recently is a different way of visualizing our network. So using color to denote mode and using that to help from an accessibility and engagement perspective, very much inspired from a lot of the common sense best practice you see across other parts of the world and indeed the UK. And here's some examples of the types of customer benefits that we're delivering through this digital platform. So loyalty, mentioned here, multi-pass, for example, using local attractions and third-party data feeds for those third-party attractions to make it a really easy and encouraging and exciting platform for our customers to use. And that's it. Diolch. Thank you.